President Trump has said that he's not satisfied with Iran's latest proposal that has been sent via the mediator Pakistan. He says that he is not sure if the two nations are going to have a deal at all. Trump, while speaking to the reporter, says that Iran sent a revised peace proposal to the US via the Pakistani mediators, and according to Iran's previous offer, that had been rejected by Trump as well. And he now believes that a breakthrough, an imminent breakthrough for now, does not seem possible.
We're just winning. Well, we're just winning. If it were a fight, they'd stop it. If this were a fight, they'd stop it. You know that expression, it's true. But they're not coming through with the kind of deal that we have to have, and we're going to get this thing done properly. We're not going to leave early and then have the problem arise in 3 more years.
Let's connect with Mayank this morning. Good morning to you, Mayank. What we understand as far as Iranian plan is concerned, what are we now looking at? You know, will the military action resume? President Trump doesn't seem very happy with it. As far as Iranian side is concerned, what is being said according to reports that it is not budging from its nuclear program, and that for President Trump is not acceptable.
So I would begin by, it's a sort of a question actually. Why should one believe in such a high-stake talk things will happen immediately? I mean, that's the baseline with which I would start, because a country like Iran, which has to give up the biggest bargaining chip in its hand, and this kind of a push and pull is happening since 2015, when Joint Comprehensive Plan was formed. The baseline starts from there actually. What happened in last 2 months is a war, and that war also has a basis there, because it is nuclear ultimately, and US is ultimately pissed off or is not able to comprehend the way the things are happening, or they are not liking it actually, because ultimately it is all about not allowing Iran to be capable of producing weapons, which is nuclear weapons. That's the ultimate thing. But same is the case with the Iran in which way it has to gain maximum out of this kind of a mitigation or discussion. They have to eke out the maximum from them. So why does one believe that things will happen so quickly? That's the most important point. Now, when you spoke about the kind of effect of crude oil, or the stoppages of supplies is affecting the whole world. Yeah. It's all the part of the plan actually. Nobody thought when war was started that, and as of even now you can remember, or our viewers will remember, that when war started, US had been making claims that it will finish off in quick succession or maybe in few days. That did not happen. So Iran was digging in, and they brought out sort of a pigeon from the hat, was Strait of Hormuz. They have used it to the hilt. They have used it as a strategic tool to the hilt. So this is how the things are happening. You cannot wonder. I mean, things will have to understood in the light of the way that for Iran, they have made it a matter of do or die, in the sense that if they give up their demands, or rather whatever gain they have to make out of this talk through the nuclear discussion. So they are thinking that, I mean, Iran, as far as we can make out from the way the things are happening, they have to get maximum out of this deal.
Yes.
And
if there are sticking points, and if both sides are not agreeing, then what, how do we look at the situation? How prolonged will be the conflict? Because if the world is already feeling the pitch, they will not be agreeing to a certain point as far as this escalation is concerned, that they will be going to abide by what, President Trump says, and Iran's rejection of, internally as well. There are said that there are multiple differences of not being on the same page. So exactly who is leading Iran is a question that's something President Trump himself has been raising. Let's in the meantime get you another update, because the Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has come out to term the negotiations with the United States as not conventional. Now, what is being said, that he goes on to say that the problem with the American side is that it always expected to impose its maximum demands during negotiations and throughout the entire diplomatic process, pushing the other side to accept them, and saying that there are negotiations that are taking place with a very bloody background. And this is something to the Iranian side that they are of the opinion that if they are, moving one step forward, United States, however, doesn't seem to be doing on that road. So, Mayank, Mayank, Iran is of the opinion that we have been forthcoming, we are going ahead, we want talks and negotiations and dialogue, but it is US which is rigid. Accept our terms and conditions or face consequences.
That's the exactly point we have to make our viewers understand, is that every side is trying to eke out the maximum out of these talks, and that will have to be understood from in the light of the goals with which US had started, because US had certain goals. They were the people who attacked first. So they had a plan in their mind before the war started. That's how you actually surmise, or that's how the general war or conventional war takes place. From that perspective, when the US started, they had three goals, which was, first was regime change, second was not allowing Iran to become a nuclear weapon capable nation, and third, it is to destroy the capabilities to support its proxies. Fourth was Strait of Hormuz came out of a blue actually, and that. So what I'm trying to tell is actually maximum for US, or the goal for US is actually to make Iran agree on their terms and conditions, at least to a certain extent, on their certain terms and conditions on nuclear aspect. Iran is digging its heels, and they have said right from the beginning that they won't be budging as far as nuclear aspect is concerned. And you remember, certain proposals which were talked about was 20-year moratorium on nuclear enrichment. Whereas in that talk only we had been reading that Iran was ready for 5 years moratorium. So having said that, it can be matched in a different manner. Let's say Iran can go up to 7 years or 10 years, or US will have to climb down to 10 years to 7 years, something like that. I'm just trying to make people understand by quoting these examples. These are just examples. This is how the maximum has to be eked out of these talks, and the way the positions are being made, or the way the projections are being made, these are parts of diplomatic tug of wars.
Right.
Because ultimately every side has to find out the maximum from these talks. Otherwise, let's say tomorrow moratorium happens and Iran gives up its program for nuclear aspect for completely forever. Where does it stand? What is it going to gain? All these things are to be understood, and I mean we haven't got those details actually as of now.
Yes,
what is on offer from
both sides are claiming that they have an upper hand. President Trump says that militarily all of the objectives have not been achieved yet, and he is ready as far as when it comes to his military is concerned, because still we are looking at a lot of movement that seems to be happening around the Iranian borders. That seems to be an escalation as a pressure tactic really. But on part of Iran, well, as far as its foreign minister is concerned, he's been constantly on the move. He's going to Pakistan, he's going to Oman, he's even visited Russia last month rather. But in the meantime, let's also talk about this escalation in the rhetoric that has been coming in from President Trump, who in fact has defended the use of the B-2 bomber strikes on Iran. And President Trump has claimed that the strikes targeted key nuclear sites and helped stop Iran's nuclear ambitions. And projecting the operations as a decisive success, he's asserted that the action averted a larger global threat, warning that parts of the Middle East and even Europe could have faced destruction if Iran's capabilities were not checked. The president has repeatedly justified military action as necessary for security, while also keeping the options open for further strikes on the table amid stalled diplomacy. That seems to be the concern that is now raised on part of President Trump.
Because we have to take a little journey down to a beautiful country known as Iran, and we have to make sure that they don't have a nuclear weapon. We stopped them with the B-2 bombers. If we didn't do that, we would have had a nuclear weapon. Israel would have been blown to pieces. The Middle East would have been blown to pieces. I think Europe would have been blown to pieces.
Mayank, again, the understanding of who really has an upper hand in this case. Both sides have been declaring a decisive victory. But as far as the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, because President Trump is of the opinion that the naval blockade will continue irrespective of the talks.
See, the maximum, I mean, let's understand this, and we can easily agree to that aspect that Iran would have, received the maximum blow, because it was jointly between US and Israel that they had been using their hardcore powers, military powers, to attack Iran. But then also we have to understand that Iran has been able to withstand those attacks and is able to bring the war, which was supposed to be for only lasting for a few days, has brought it to this level that they are mitigating at equal front and they are able to withstand that pressure also, is commendable. Let us understand that from that perspective, because we had been talking, US had been talking that the war will be finished quickly, and they are now talking that, they are sticking to the point that Strait of Hormuz should be opened with unconditionally, and Iran should be accepting their offers, which it is not doing actually. So it has got stuck in such a way that the world is going to face the problems, and it is already facing it. That's what we were talking, that cost of living has to rise in the coming days further, when it has already started showing the pressures all over the globe. So this is how the things are happening. But we don't see, for Iran, it is a matter of do or die, and this is how they had been projecting. So we have to understand the kind of offers, because details have not yet come out.
Well, because
why am I saying it is
that both sides are not ready for a prolonged conflict, because in the end, if they want to pressurize the world also in reacting, because for how long will the countries bear the burden of rising, cost inflation is something that continues to remain as a threat. But, in the long term, it is not either good for President Trump and his administration, neither it is good for Iran to sustain a prolonged conflict. Let's in the meantime also talk about what President Trump has been reiterating. He has continued to maintain that Iran has been decimated. They have no navy, they have no air force, claiming that there is no anti-aircraft, no radar. And Iran also has no leaders, according to President Trump, as far as in the past as well, that he's made such kind of statements, where he continues to say that on part of this conflict where the United States has been leading with the strikes there with Israel, well, America has all the cards. Again, this is a statement being repeated by President Trump.
They're getting decimated. They have no Navy. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft equipment. They have no radar. They have no leaders. Their leaders are all gone.
Well, here's another statement that he's often repeated, is how unhappy he is with the NATO allies, saying that he receives zero help from them, and saying that the lack of support is something that President Trump has highlighted, saying that NATO's commitment is something that needs to be questioned, as the US has spent trillions of dollars on it, and NATO, however, did not help, saying that we spent trillions of dollars and we got no help from the NATO allies. As far as in the past as well, President Trump has labeled NATO to be a paper tiger, a coward, as far as the countries there are concerned, because outrightly, even today, they have snubbed President Trump as far as their, extending support to this conflict is something that they also do not want to be a part of it directly or even indirectly. Well, let's listen into what President Trump has said on NATO.
And we got no help from NATO. We got no help, zero from NATO. We spent trillions of dollars on NATO. We got no help. We didn't need it, but we got none.
Well, Mayank, this is not coming in as a brainer from President Trump. Time and again, he continues to repeat his statements. Of course, he's been talking about the 8 conflicts that he has solved in the past while being in office this year. But however, this is something that he has been also talking and reiterating about how unhappy he is with NATO.
Absolutely, and we have to wait and watch once all this gets over, in what form the NATO will emerge. That's also a moot point actually, which has started coming to the minds of the people. They had been time and again wanting that it is the NATO allies which should come in, join the war in such a way that they are supporting in opening Strait of Hormuz. This is what we are finding since last, so many days, and which has not taken place. Primarily the larger nations, which include Germany, France, even Italy, they had been, or even UK, they did not ever buzz from their point that they won't be joining the war directly. This has been a clear case as far as these nations are concerned. So we have to wait and watch in what form the NATO will emerge post this conflict is over and some kind of a mitigation is successful. We have to wait and watch.
All right. Wait and watch seems to be the case, but President Trump not being happy with the deal. What are we now looking at? Is there are certain reports from within Iran as far as its leadership is also concerned, Mayank. There were certain reports suggesting that, they're not very happy with the way Araghchi has been conducting himself and maybe going against the line as far as the IRGC is also concerned? Or is it the kind of support that IRGC seems to be extending to Araghchi, which President Pezeshkian and the Parliament Speaker Ghalibaf do not seem to be on the same page? But when we talk about Pentagon, that seems to be also planning to withdraw about 5,000 American troops from Germany. Now, this seems to be another sense of pressure tactics that seems to be to build, because what has now been said that this move is being characterized as a signal of President Trump's discontent with the level of assistance that the European allies have offered to the US, and especially when it comes to the current conflict. So President Trump, who has publicly criticized the German Chancellor as well and the leaders of the other NATO members on not directly getting involved. Well, Mayank, this has now been seen as far as US military campaign against Iran. There is already a massive presence in Germany that goes back as the aftermath of World War II and Cold War as well. And it is being said that there are more than 36,000 active duty troops that has been assigned to its bases. So what happens if those troops move out?
See, the most important point is actually it was the bases in the Middle East which were hit by Iran in such a way that it pressurizes US. That's what the whole plan was during this entire campaign, which took place for almost 42 days. So from going by that, there's a concept called rest and recuperation. If these troops have been moved out or they have not been utilized that way, there is a process of churning over, or there's a process of one set of troops replacing the other set of troops. So maybe the requirement is from that perspective also, because in terms of hardcore military weaponry, equipments and systems were moved from Asia also. Those were the reports. So it's kind of a reorganization or reorbiting. That's the technical term actually. This is called order of battle is changed in such a way that it favors a nation. That's how the technical term is actually. So this is what exactly you can see from that perspective. But as I have said, wait and watch for the format in which NATO will emerge later on. Because as of now, this is just can be seen from that perspective. One important point on IRGC is that it has been a grooming ground for an entire leadership, even if judiciary, parliament or any civil sphere in Iran is concerned, right from Mustafa Khamenei, he was IRGC commander, Basij battalion he commanded. Yeah. Then you come to speaker, he has been from the IRGC. So you cannot forego or you cannot preclude these important informations when you talk of leadership. Ultimately, it has not disintegrated and they are able to put across their point in a joint manner. That's the success of Iran in one way or the other, or maybe IRGC, because we don't know much from there. So having said that, even if there's a difference, that we need to understand from that perspective. Will they disintegrate? They have not yet disintegrated in terms of leadership and carrying out the campaign. So but these are the very
unclear, Mayank, as to who is actually calling the shots. I mean, is this there a heavy influence of the IRGC, or are we looking at as far as the leadership who has been going for these diplomatic talks either to Islamabad or other countries as well? So it is still unclear who exactly is calling the shots, because we've seen that despite the ceasefire, there have been rounds of firing that has been reported in the Strait of Hormuz by the IRGC. And this is something which President Trump time and again has raised as to first Iran needs to fix who is the person who is making all of the decisions. We just have to leave it at that, Mayank, for the moment. Thank you very much for joining in. Heading into a very short break. You're watching Times Now.